You are listening to Eat Meat Sparingly, a Word of Wisdom podcast. I am your host, Ali Essig. This episode is sponsored by the Holistic Holiday at Sea. The Holistic Holiday at Sea is a vegan cruise that sets sail to the Caribbean March 1st through the 8th this year. Now, imagine not only going on a cruise, but also being able to eat whole food plant-based, not just vegan, but whole food plant-based. You will feel amazing. This may actually be a cruise where you lose weight. Or at least you probably won't gain any because there's a lot of food, but it is delicious, healthy food. And then the best part is that you also not only are going to go out and explore and enjoy the beautiful Caribbean, but on those days at sea, you get to attend a medical conference pretty much every day where you're listening to famous doctors like Dr. Barnard, and Dr. Greger, and so many others. It is empowering. It like strengthens your testimony of a plant-based diet to hear all of the benefits and all of the reasons why we all should be eating this way. And if you're like me, you'll be sitting there in the audience going, oh my gosh, this is the word of wisdom. Why aren't we all following this? These are so many benefits. I just want to tell everyone to follow the word of wisdom. That's what happens. Every time I go to these plant-based medical conferences, I'm like, I wish everyone knew this. And therefore, I'm going to share as much as I can on the podcast, as much as I learn for those who can't make it. But if you can make it, when you book before November 21st, you will save $200. And if you mention PlantWhys, PlantWhys, you will get a $50 credit that you can spend in the bookstore while you're there. So make sure you save room in your luggage to buy a new book and enjoy. I hope to see you there. All right, this episode is all about PCOS. But before we begin, I'm just getting over a little bit of a cold. And even though I feel like ever since I added amla green to my drinks, I never get sick. But if I do not watch my stress, I will get sick. And if I don't allow myself to rest, and I felt like this last week, we had friends come and visit with their family, trying to get everything done. I usually take the time to take a little nap in the afternoon if I feel like my body needs it. And I just kind of push through, maybe didn't get as much sleep at night, and it catches up to you. And I think it's that internal pressure too. We're starting a new program inside the PlantWhys membership. It's so good. It's called Embodiment. It's all about listening to your heart, finding your intuition, meditating, doing yin yoga. It's incredible. Letting go of trapped emotions. It's so darn good. But it took a lot out of me to film it. And I had a timeline. That's usually how I work. I'm like, if I tell everyone I'm going to do it by this time, then it will get done. And it just puts internal pressure and feeling like there's never enough time. And it's a limiting belief that definitely puts more stress on us. And I feel like as women, we tend to do these things, right? We make a list of 20 million things that we want to get done today, and it's impossible to get all those things done. Why do we do this to ourselves? Why can't we be more realistic? I just have high hopes, but also too high of expectations. So as women, let's drop those expectations. It's one of the reasons why I think many women have more autoimmune disease than men. We put a lot of pressure on ourselves. And today, as we talk about PCOS, it affects women, obviously, because it's all about your ovaries and what's going on in that region and how it affects everything else. But I think there's a lot more to it than just what I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to talk a lot about food and a lot about diet, but I think what is beyond this is lifestyle, is stress management, and really just giving ourselves more grace. I think we could all use a little bit more grace. But when it comes to PCOS, what exactly is PCOS? PCOS is polycystic ovary syndrome. It is a common hormonal disorder that affects women, usually during their reproductive years. Now, it impacts how the ovaries function and can affect menstrual health, metabolism, and most important, fertility. Many of you who have it know that it can be difficult to get pregnant, among many other things. Now, despite the name, you actually don't need ovarian cysts to have PCOS. And not all ovarian cysts mean that you have PCOS. So something to keep in mind there. Now, common signs and symptoms tend to be irregular or missed periods, acne or oily skin, unwanted hair growth, especially on the chin, right? Your chest, your back. You see women that kind of have it on their face. Whenever I see women with a little bit more facial hair, I'm like, I bet you have PCOS. Hair thinning or hair loss on the scalp, weight gain or even trouble losing weight, mood swings, depression or anxiety, fatigue or low energy. Skin darkening is also another common symptom. So I'll notice this on other women too. And I'm like, I bet that's PCOS. And you'll see that darkening skin either on your neck or under your arms or on your groin. Now, how is PCOS diagnosed? It is usually diagnosed if you have at least two of the following. So number 1, irregular or absent ovulation. Number 2, signs of high androgens, which are hormones like testosterone. Number 3, polycystic ovaries seen on an ultrasound. So if you have at least 2 of those, that's usually how PCOS is diagnosed. What causes it? The exact cause is not known. PCOS is linked to insulin resistance. That's why we're going to really go deep into that today, especially how common it is in PCOS and how beneficial it is to manage your blood sugar levels if you have PCOS. It's also linked to these high androgen levels. And it's why, again, not just managing your blood sugar levels, but eating more fiber is key here. Eating more fiber. When you eat more fiber, it acts like a scrub brush, right? To clean out all the excess hormones. And so fiber, a higher fiber diet is going to be very beneficial. Chronic inflammation is another thing that may cause it. And again, that's why a plant-based diet is really beneficial, because it's going to lower your inflammation, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But then there's always genetics. There's always genetics. It's like that wild card where sometimes you could be doing everything right, but you're just handed the wild card, which comes with the genes. So why does PCOS matter? If it is left unmanaged, PCOS can lead to an increase in the risk of type 2 diabetes. You see this very common. Again, the insulin resistance, very common with PCOS. Heart disease as well. Fertility issues, may be really hard to get pregnant. Endometrial cancer is common. High cholesterol, you're at a higher risk. And even sleep apnea, which is kind of interesting. Now, managing PCOS naturally can be beneficial. Obviously, you want to work with your doctor, but a holistic approach can really help manage symptoms and support your long-term health. And the reason why is because balancing things like your blood sugar, including regular movement and exercise, reducing stress, and improving your quality sleep is all going to be so helpful. And consistent support and follow up with a healthcare provider is important. I don't want you to just think, okay, I was diagnosed with this, I'm going to do this all on my own. That's all I need to do. No, I definitely want you to still be working with your healthcare provider to figure out what else you can do. But again, like I said, it's not just diet, even though that's what we'll talk about, but exercise. If you can exercise regularly, it's going to help with insulin resistance. It's going to help with so many things, and stress reduction. If you're doing everything right, but you're still super stressed, if you struggle forgiving others, if you struggle letting go of things, that's actually why I did my embodiment course inside our membership, because we could eat the diet right, but if we're not willing to let go of sometimes these trapped emotions that we hold on to, if we're not willing to forgive others, then the heck with the diet, right? Like it's not going to be as effective as it could be if we're not combining all those together along with sleep. Now, what are some tips when it comes to nutrition? So that's, again, what I'm going to focus on today, and we'll go into a little bit more detail, but just an overall approach is focusing on high fiber foods like leafy greens, legumes, berries, whole grains, and including plant-based proteins like tofu, lentils, and tempeh, and choosing these low glycemic carbs. Really, another way to describe it is just the complex carbohydrates. We want to be avoiding those more simple carbohydrates, the ones that are more processed, right? Avoiding processed foods. Fat is okay, but we really want to minimize saturated fat and prioritize more healthy fats like avocados, nuts, and flax seeds, and limiting refined sugar. Again, limiting white carbs, limiting processed snacks. I cannot say that enough. That's really, really important. So eating plant-based can be a very powerful tool in managing PCOS because it targets several root issues, okay, including insulin resistance, chronic inflammation, hormonal imbalance, and it really, really, really has to manage those blood sugar levels. Now, we can easily do this on a plant-based diet, especially if you minimize your saturated fat intake. And here's why it matters. If you have heard my other podcast episodes on diabetes, it's very similar. When you're looking at glucose metabolism and a rundown of kind of how it works, it's a common belief that eating sugar or starch may trigger the disease process, and that the human body runs on glucose, which is a simple sugar. And so like gasoline, it powers a car, glucose powers muscles and brain and the rest of the body. But during the powering process, glucose needs an invitation to enter your cells. It doesn't come in on its own. It needs insulin. Insulin is the key that unlocks the door that lets glucose into your muscle cells. Now, here's the problem. For a normal, healthy person, your pancreas releases insulin, insulin goes into the insulin receptor, and then glucose is then let into your cells, is the uptake into the cells. But for people with insulin resistance, people who tend to have PCOS, the pancreas will release the insulin, but the insulin cannot unlock the door because the key itself is jammed. Like the key lock is jammed, and it's jammed up with what's called saturated fat. So insulin cannot unlock the door because it's like, oh, I can't put the key in. It's jammed with this fat, this sticky substance. I can't do its job properly. And so therefore glucose is not uptaken into the cells. And therefore you have high blood sugar levels, which increases your inflammation, which increases your PCOS symptoms, all of these things. And so how do you fix this? And how do we know that this really is the case? In 1999, researchers at Yale University used this newly available technology to show a relationship between the buildup of microscopic fat droplets in the cells and insulin resistance. They were able to prove that fats are jamming the locks so the insulin can't open the door to let glucose in the cells. Now, these lipid droplets are quite complex and can be impacted by other pathways. It may not necessarily always indicate a negative impact on insulin sensitivity. However, research is showing this connection between the two, indicating that there is an advantage to lowering the amount of saturated fat that you're consuming so that you can become more insulin sensitive. Saturated fat is mainly found in animal fats, period, and even vegetable fat like palm oil and coconut oil. But the problem with saturated fat is it doesn't need an invitation to enter your cells. So when saturated fat takes up too much space, insulin can't do its job. Fat gums up the lock. And since insulin is the key that unlocks the door, it simply cannot do its job. And so the storage of excess fatty acids in our muscles and liver cells, it disrupts insulin signaling and reduces the ability of glucose to enter, resulting in high blood glucose levels. Cells are not responding well to insulin, creating this insulin resistance. And preliminary research is finding insulin resistance can be associated with specific fat types like dietary palmitate, which is coconut oil and animal fats, and potentially connected to insulin resistance and oleic. These monounsaturated fats are found to, in general, be a little bit more protective. Now, most doctors, if you have PCOS, they will tell you to go on a low carb diet. And I know a lot of women where this has actually been very helpful. And it is true, especially if you have PCOS, sometimes to manage the symptoms. It's a fantastic short-term solution. Short term, though, between about 3 to 6 months, if you go on a low carb diet, it will help to reduce your blood glucose variability. It's going to bring your blood glucose levels down because you're not eating as much sugar. It's going to help improve your A1C levels, and it's going to reduce the total insulin use and will help you lose weight. It might even improve your LDL cholesterol, which is great. And so if that's all you need is just this short-term solution, sometimes this can be a great way to do it. However, in the long term, low carb diets, they really do equal this long-term chronic disease risk. If you've done it for more than 6 months, if you feel like your PCOS symptoms aren't improving, so you continue to be on it, and then you see over time, 6 months to a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years of a low carb diet is actually going to increase your risk of heart disease. It's going to increase your hypertension. It's going to increase your LDL cholesterol. It's going to increase your triglycerides. It's going to increase so many other issues like inflammation, increased cancer risk, increased kidney failure risk, increased total body inflammation. And overall, you may end up gaining more weight or have an inability to lose weight or even low energy or impaired digestion, which is really, really hard. Now, along with this, not only do we want to minimize saturated fat, but it's important to also note the impact of added sugar on PCOS. And although glucose is an important fuel for the body, your body does not need added sugars. So when you consume soda, snack food, candy, cake, cookies, and other desserts, you're also consuming higher levels of saturated fats as well. And so it's really important that you, in general, aim for under 25 grams of added sugar. Okay, so 25 grams or less of added sugar a day. That does not include the sugar that's naturally found in fruit. Okay, that is sugar that you would eat in your yogurt, sugar that's in your drink, whatever it is that you're consuming. Remember that insulin is also a fat storage hormone. So when you consume more sugar, more insulin is released and more fat is stored. And over time, this can also result in, again, more insulin resistance. So we really want to minimize added sugars. It's not just the saturated fat's fault. And even protein, again, protein can be a great temporary solution and can help those lose weight, right? For those who struggle with excess adipose fat tissue, high protein diets, which are about more than 20% protein, might be helpful in reducing body weight, which subsequently will increase insulin sensitivity. And adequate weight maintenance will always be beneficial for PCOS and insulin resistance because it is affected by the body's fat stores and how they fluctuate. However, continuously consuming a high protein, non-restricted diet containing more than 20% of protein can lead to hyperinsulinemia, and in the long term can potentially contribute to insulin resistance. So dietary proteins have an insulinotropic effect, which promote insulin secretion. So you really do not want to be on a high protein diet long term. Again, this goes back to, this is a great short-term solution. If you can see effects on it, awesome. But the long-term solution, what does a diet with PCOS look like in order to manage symptoms long term? And for those individuals, if you have PCOS, you want to make sure that about 70% of your calories comes from carbohydrates, about 15% of your calories comes from fat, and about 15% of your calories come from protein. Now, if you are trying to gain muscle, if you're really lifting heavy weights, can you increase that protein amount? Yeah, you definitely can. You definitely can, especially if it comes from plant-based protein. It's going to be more effective in that sense. But in general, it's really important to note that on average, 30 grams of fat total, not just saturated fat, 30 grams of fat total in a day or less should be your goal, and 10 grams of saturated fat or less. So 30 grams of fat in total or 10 grams of saturated fat or less a day, both of those combined into one goal, is really important to manage your symptoms and to manage the insulin sensitivity. You will be amazed if you are able to do that. It's tricky at first, and it really is tricky if you're used to eating a lot of animal foods like cheese, because cheese is super high in saturated fat, or even just, again, you can totally do this and eat meat sparingly, but it's just harder to reach those numbers. It's a lot easier to do on a plant-based diet. And again, PCOS is manageable. You're not alone. With the right support and with these small sustainable changes, you can feel better, you can balance your hormones, and you really can take charge of your health. And again, the goals that you have in order to take charge of your health, if you have PCOS, should be number one, improve your insulin sensitivity. You need to minimize your saturated fat and your total fat. So no more than 10 grams of saturated fat a day, no more than 30 grams of total fat in a day or less. That will improve your insulin sensitivity. It is the best long-term solution. If you want to do a short-term solution of eating a low-carb diet, that's fine. 3 to 6 months, no big deal. It's not a great long-term solution for your overall long-term health. It's going to increase your risk of heart disease, going to increase your risk of cancer, so many other things. And so unless you're possibly doing it in a plant-based way, but even then you have to really be careful with the saturated fat that you're eating. You can't be eating a ton of coconut oil or palm oil. And so I highly recommend minimizing the total fat in your day. Number 2, reduce inflammation. You really need to make it your goal, if you have PCOS, to minimize inflammation as much as possible. And you're going to do that by replacing your high fat dairy, your meats, right? And your sweets, all of those added sugars with plant-based foods, because they have more antioxidants, more nutrients, more polyphenols. We want to minimize those sugar surges. It's okay to have blood sugar fluctuations. We want to minimize the surges where they go up and down. And you know it. It's like when you eat, like at church on Sunday, they had croissants like that were sweetened with like some stuff. Anyway, I had a bite or two. It was like headache. Holy cow. Like you feel that's a sugar surge. That's what happens when you have a sugar surge. And it wasn't like a big headache. It was tiny, but I'm just so sensitive to these things now that I notice it. I'm like, oh, yep. Because 25% of the energy that you're consuming goes straight to your brain. So it makes sense that I would have a little bit of a headache after eating too much sugar when it gives you that surge. So minimize those sugar surges, eat as much antioxidants and nutrients and polyphenols that you can. And number 3, you really, 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 really want to support your hormonal balance if you have PCOS. And so it's super important that you eat at least 25 grams of fiber a day, 25 grams of fiber a day. Okay. So that is how you support your hormonal balance. And again, minimize added sugars to 25 grams a day or less. So it's the same number to remember. In fact, you want to make it super easy, like 30 is your number, right? You could even just think, okay, I need no more than 30 grams of fat. I need at least 30 grams of fiber and no more, I'll give you an extra 5 grams of sugar, no more than 30 grams of added sugar. If that just makes it super easy if you don't even want to think about it all. And that really, really, really will help you manage your PCOS. So it's super important important that you take the time to do that. Why? Why does this plan work? Well, again, it improves insulin sensitivity. Insulin resistance is one of the most common drivers of PCOS symptoms. And a plant-based diet is going to help by reducing that saturated fat, which impairs the insulin signaling. It's going to increase your fiber intake from vegetables, legumes, whole grains, which slows down glucose absorption and lowers blood sugar levels and those blood sugar spikes. And it's going to improve your gut health, which supports metabolic regulation and glucose metabolism. So the key nutrients that help in this, without even really needing to know what they are, is magnesium. When you're eating more leafy greens and legumes, you're getting more magnesium. Chromium comes from whole grains, right? So you're just naturally eating more whole grains, and antioxidants, which are found in berries, cruciferous vegetables, any of these fruits and veggies, you're going to get that. Why else does this work well? It helps reduce inflammation because chronic low-grade inflammation is common in PCOS, and it worsens symptoms like weight gain and acne. Plant-based diets are naturally anti-inflammatory because they're high in antioxidants and phytonutrients and fight oxidative stress. They're low in inflammatory triggers like red meat, dairy, and processed foods. They're rich in omega-3s from flax seeds, chia seeds, walnuts, and they're lower in inflammation markers. Studies show that plant-based diets lower CRP, which is the C-reactive protein, which is a key marker of inflammation in PCOS. And number 3, why does it help balance hormones? Plant-based eating promotes hormonal balance by supporting healthy estrogen metabolism through a high fiber intake, which helps eliminate excess hormones via the digestive system. It is so important that you eat a high fiber diet because when you do that, the excess hormones are eliminated through your gut, reducing androgen, which is that male hormone levels, by improving insulin resistance and lowering body fat, both of which influence testosterone production, and encourages a healthy gut flora, which plays a surprising role in regulating estrogen and androgens. Some studies have found that plant-based diets can help normalize menstrual cycles and reduce excess hair growth. Okay. So it's just worth it to me. It's so totally worth it to switch out your chicken for chickpeas. I promise you, is not as hard as you are making it out in your head. You know what I ate for dinner yesterday? You want to know what I ate for dinner? I cooked a bean-based pasta and I put nutritional yeast and garlic salt on it to flavor it. And then I cut up a bunch of veggies and had hummus. It took me 7 minutes to put together. It does not have to be hard. It really can be easy. And many people with PCOS, they tend to struggle with weight gain, and plant-based diets tend to be lower in calorie density, making weight loss and maintenance so much easier and more filling because of the fiber, reducing those cravings and overeating, and lower in added sugar and fats. And so as you're going about this, you're like, okay, I'm ready. I have PCOS. I am willing to do the work that is required in order to improve it. And if that's the case, I really want you to prioritize more non-starchy vegetables in your life. Make sure you're eating broccoli, kale, spinach, cauliflower, zucchini, bell peppers, Brussels sprouts. Why? Because like these vegetables are lower in carbohydrates, but high in fiber, which slows down glucose absorption. They're packed with antioxidants that reduce inflammation. And cruciferous vegetables like broccoli, kale, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, all of those things, bok choy, right? They support estrogen metabolism. So that is super important. Really prioritize those non-starchy vegetables. I also want you to prioritize those low glycemic fruits like berries, apples, pears, citruses, cherries. Why? Because they're lower in sugar. And at first, while you're trying to manage your blood sugar levels, it's going to help to minimize any blood sugar spikes. But they're also rich in vitamin C and flavonoids and fiber that improve insulin function, and they reduce oxidative stress. But again, I don't want you to fear any type of fruit because once you minimize that fat that you're eating, you can eat any type of fruit liberally without even worrying about it. Whole grains like quinoa, oats, barley, farro, brown rice, all of those things are super important. They provide these complex carbohydrates that release energy slowly. They contain magnesium and B vitamins, which help with blood sugar regulation and hormonal balance, and they improve satiety, helping with weight control. I feel like if I just were to eat a salad alone, I would feel so hungry. I always need a piece of bread. I'm a bread lover, guys. I like it, but if it's the whole grain bread, it's just going to keep you fuller longer. Now, legumes and beans are also key, like lentils, chickpeas, black beans, kidney beans. They're excellent sources of plant-based protein and soluble fiber to help keep you fuller longer. They help lower cholesterol, and beans are amazing. Have you ever heard of the lentil effect? When you eat lentils, within 24 hours, you have better blood sugar regulation. They are so powerful. They help improve insulin sensitivity. They should not be avoided. You should really just slowly ease them into your life. They support a healthy gut. They have so much prebiotic fiber. They're so good for you. But if your gut can't handle them, just go low and slow, a little bit at a time, over time, and you'll start to be able to train your gut to handle them. Now, you're not going to go a zero fat diet. We do want you to have healthy fats. We're from avocados or nuts, almonds, walnuts, seeds like flaxseed, chia seed, hemp seeds. And you're just not going to go overboard with the fats, okay? Fats are important. They support hormone production and reduce inflammation, especially those omega-3s from flax, chia seeds, or walnuts. They help to reduce testosterone levels and regulate your cycle. And again, plant-based proteins are awesome. Tofu, tempeh, edamame, seitan, lentils, any type of beans or protein-rich grains. They help manage those blood sugar levels without the saturated fat found in meat. And tofu and tempeh contain isoflavones, those phytoestrogens, which may help with the hormone balance in some people with PCOS. So it can actually be really beneficial and not something to be avoided. And you can easily just swip out your dairy milk with soy milk and get those same benefits. So it does not have to be that difficult. Herbs and spices and teas are beneficial. Cinnamon, turmeric, and even spearmint tea. Cinnamon improves insulin sensitivity. Turmeric is a powerful anti-inflammatory spice. Make sure you pair it with some pepper. And spearmint tea may help reduce androgen, which is testosterone levels, and improve that extra hair that you have growing everywhere. That's really like spearmint can be really, really beneficial of that. So if you are struggling with hair in places you don't want it to be, start sipping on some spearmint tea or peppermint tea. We want to make sure that you're avoiding or limiting refined carbs, right? White bread, pastries. My only exception is maybe white sourdough bread is okay because you're getting other beneficials, and it's not going to spike your blood sugar as much because of the sourdough benefits of it. But, or even there's so many benefits you get when it's fermented versus non-fermented. But overall, besides sourdough bread, make sure you're just eating whole grain breads, okay? Sugary drinks or snacks you want to avoid, like a very minimal amount if possible. Even processed vegan foods, because you're trying to keep your fat as low as possible, I want you to use those mock meats sparingly and definitely avoid the vegan junk food because even though Oreos are vegan, they're not good for you. So anything with excess caffeine, no alcohol, all of those things we want to make sure to avoid. And finally, I think it's so simple, and this is why I teach a way to do this, but one of the most powerful things you can do when you have PCOS, it's super practical and actionable, is to follow the PlantWhys Plate. The PlantWhys Plate is every time you sit down to eat, your meal must contain a fruit, a vegetable, a whole grain or potato, and at least 20 grams of plant-based protein. This makes it doable. It's not overwhelming. You're getting adequate protein. You're going to be able to reach all those needs. You don't have to be worried about being protein deficient in any way. But most importantly, you're not going to be fiber deficient. Most importantly, you're not going to be antioxidant deficient. Most importantly, you're going to be getting everything that your body needs that it hasn't been getting. And so if you really do want to find peace with PCOS, making a plant-based diet, your goal is key, right? And remember that 30 rule. We're going to just make it easy. Everything's 30, no more than 30 grams of fat, no more than 30 grams of added sugar, and then make it your goal to at least get 30 grams of fiber. If you do this, you will be able to manage your symptoms so much easier. You're going to have so much more energy. You're going to feel amazing. And while it may be a little bit difficult first, that's why I developed my program to help you do it. In the PlantWhys membership, we help people transition to a plant-based diet who know they need to. I've just given you all the information. I just threw it up all at you. This is everything you need to do if you have PCOS to manage your symptoms. You could get this information for free, but I do help people and invite them into my program if they feel like they can't do it on their own. If you need your handheld, if you need good recipes, if you need just the accountability to actually follow through with what you know you need to do. So if you need that support and help, make sure to click on the link below to learn more about our membership. As always, there's always great Black Friday specials that I'm offering. There's always New Year's things that are coming up. So definitely, if you're not already on my email list, when you go to plantwhys.com, just scroll to the bottom, get on my newsletter so that you can be up to date on any specials that I'm offering for Black Friday or anything else coming up. But regardless, you know what to do. Just follow through and you will find peace with PCOS. But don't forget, it's not just about diet. It's about stress. It's about stress. Just like me, my perfect example of today. If you want to avoid a coughing attack, then minimize your stress and make sure you get enough rest. Sleep is also important. So it's not just diet, it's minimizing stress, getting enough rest, and really loving your family, spending time, loving on others, loving yourself, forgiving more. It all matters. So let me know if you have any questions, but thank you so much, guys. I'll see you next week. Thank you for listening to Eat Meat Sparingly, a Word of Wisdom podcast. I'm your host, Ali Essig. And if you need more help and support with transitioning to eating more plants so you can lose weight and improve your gut health and just reduce your risk of chronic disease, then make sure to check out my PlantWhys membership. That's PlantWhys, because I like to teach the why behind eating more plants. But if all you need is just a couple more delicious recipes that feed your family and everyone loves, and not to mention super simple and easy, then make sure to check out my YouTube channel, which is also PlantWhys, PlantWhys. Hope to see you there.